Hello on 101 FM. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org, and if you're overseas and on the move, US listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you're in the UK, 0330-332-6541, or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, the pros and cons of the failed pandemic treaty. And in the second watch, gender-based violence, a scourge on Jamaican society. For our social media question, we ask, what is most needed now to help fight gender-based violence? We're asking you to share your responses on our Love 101 FM Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also on WhatsApp 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your responses later on in the program, but before all of that, here's our quote.
All right. Good morning. So today's I quote says, water has no effect on fake flowers. Yeah.
And who said that? An interesting name there, eh?
I'm leaving it right there.
All right. Good morning, Jukal. How you doing? Good. The first watch will be back after this break.
Is your money idling when it could be thriving? With CIBC Caribbean's fixed deposit offering, you can take charge of your cash. With 50,000 Jamaican to start, choose terms from 30 days to 2 years. Lock in your funds and enjoy premium rates guaranteed to grow your wealth. Whether you're eyeing short or long-term gains, our fixed deposit account puts you firmly in control of your money. Now is the time to open a CIBC fixed deposit account and start earning more today. CIBC, ambitions made real.
Joseph Patty wickedness coca bread. Patty can't without coca bread. Lay the patty eat flat in the bread. Bread soft with coca bread. Patty hot gas can't chuck in the bread. Joseph Patty with coca bread nice. With them coca bread are my choice. When soft you know it tastes nice. Coca bread with the chicken no rice. Bread. Get your best patty and coca bread at Juicy today.
Get a Samsung A05 from Flow for $8,125 or a Samsung A05s for only $9,000. Both come with a free 28-day unlimited social talk and text plan. Now that's great news. Visit a Flow store today. Available while stocks last. Conditions apply.
Jamaica and its workforce are advancing quickly. Life-changing opportunities are arising. You need training and support. We are the Renewed Heart NSTA Trust, committed to providing new and emerging skills training and opportunities. Come to Heart. We'll help you claim your place in the workforce of the future.
As a man living with HIV, a regular day from me, not much different from yours. I have to wake up and go to people that work in the traffic, but then when we reach, we can run some joke with my co-worker them. Sometimes we link up after work, or play ball, or just dip on my ends and kick back before we go home. You see how much we have in common? People living with HIV are a part of our community. Make a par. Protect, accept, and respect. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
My mega With so much to do in one location, make Mega Mart your one-stop shop. Pick up your groceries and houseware needs, grab a bite and pay some bills, fill your prescriptions and see the beauty products in our pharmacy, all in one amazing location. My Mega Mart, the best value by far.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Now, for some, COVID-19 is a distant memory. For others, its effects will haunt them for years to come. And regardless of which side of the fence you sit in the wake of the pandemic, there was a feeling of urgency, a question of how could we do better next time? Now, in response, the World Health Organization, WHO, attempted what was called a pandemic treaty. But the attempt has sadly failed, with the co-chair of the WHO reportedly stating, "We are not where we hoped we would be when we started this process." So, what are we to make of this failed attempt? Well, to discuss this matter, we have joining us the Reverend Dr. Ralston Nemard, Anglican priest, writer, columnist, as well as evangelist Joseph Buckland. Good morning to you both. Good morning.
Listeners and to your fellow guest.
Yes. Morning, Reverend Nemard. Evangelist Buckland, are you with us? Not hearing you. Okay. I gather he'll be connected soon. I don't know if he's muted and don't realize it. Okay, Reverend Nemard, we start off with you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Loud and
Right.
clear.
Yes. Okay. Evangelist Buckland, are you with us now?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you now. You sound a little low. Could you increase the volume? All right. Okay, gentlemen, what do you regard as some of the major successes and failures associated with the recent pandemic? Begin with you, Reverend Nemard.
Well, one of the biggest failures for me is that well, let me speak of the successes first, because and it's a matter of awareness. I think the world became aware of the potential destructiveness of microbes, environment, and the devastation that they can wreak on human populations. I think that awareness was important for us to know. But then when the reaction, the post-pandemic reaction is very disturbing and pathetic, in that one would have thought that with the awareness that should have come to the world, about the nature of this virus, that we would see a greater sense of unity and a greater sense of coalescing around certain, I would say, strategies, global strategies, to anticipate another one and to deal effectively with it. And that is why the failure of the WHO at its last meeting, I think was Monday, to come to terms with this particular problem and to get some kind of consensus going forward. And the failure of that and the reasons for those failures,
which we will discuss shortly.
Right, are so pathetic,
Yeah. Evangelist Buckland, your take on that? Some of the major successes and failures associated with the recent pandemic?
Okay, starting with successes. I say success in quotation marks because in the height of the pandemic sweeping the world just a few years ago, it was hoped that the vaccines that were being developed would drastically reduce the deaths arising from the COVID-19 infections. And so that was what we had hoped, that these vaccines would really help. The question is, have they really helped? Or have they produced problems that we were not expecting? Let me give you an example. According to studies done by a German scientist who is a specialist in viruses, he says that these vaccines are responsible for the sudden deaths that we are seeing all over the world. And locally, research has been done, and it is alleged that rat poison was found in some of the vaccines. And according to a research done by Matt Staver, president of Liberty Counsel in the United States, he says that monkey virus, which causes the development of cancers, was found in some of the vaccines. And in another research, it was found that some of the ingredients in some of these vaccines cause the womb in women to shrink, and the amniotic fluid that should be around the developing embryo to be reduced, causing miscarriages or infertility. This is not what the general public throughout the world were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, whatever was the potential success that we were all waiting for, the devastation caused by these side effects from the vaccines have caused a lot of people to question the integrity of the World Health Organization, and especially in the light of what they were meeting in order to decide yesterday. Yesterday, Monday, May 27, was the due date for beginning to vote on whether the WHO should have legislative authority in the event of another pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But according to the Gleaner, in its article on Saturday, May 25, it says that the countries could not agree on the way forward over the draft international health regulations. And the issue, they said, was that rich countries had more access to COVID-19 vaccines than the poorer countries, and that there was no agreement among the 194 countries how to equally share the resources, that is, information about new viruses, vaccines to control them, so that all countries may be equally prepared for any future pandemic. So it's a mixed reaction. Of course, the World Health Organization itself is very disappointed that they were not at the point in which they could vote. And the president of the World Health Organization has promised that he will ensure that the treaty will eventually be acceptable to all the countries.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the pros and the cons from the point of view that I have, based on the studies that I have done on this issue.
Hearing you loud and clear. Reverend Nemard, I don't know if you want to respond to that in 1 minute, as we will soon be going to break.
Very quickly, the development of the vaccines, and I would say the very swift development of the vaccines, was certainly a major plus in the fight against the virus. In the United States, for example, where the vaccine was quickly deployed among the population once it became certified by the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and it went out into the populations, we saw a rapid diminution of the effects of the virus on the population as a whole. I mean, that is a fact.
When you say the population, you mean world population?
No, I'm thinking of the American population in terms of the deployment of the vaccines, since it was deployed there more than anywhere else. And that has been one of the big cons.
All right, hold up that, please, Rev. We're up on a break. I'll be right back.
AccuLab Diagnostics Limited, located at ATL Plaza in Montego Bay, for all your blood testing needs. Open every day, including Sundays, 6132714.
The time by AccuLab Diagnostics Limited is
7:15 a.m.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint, and in this, the First Watch, we are discussing the pros and cons of the failed pandemic treaty. In so doing, we have online evangelist Joseph Buckland and the Reverend Dr. Ralston Nemard. Before the break, Reverend Nemard, you were responding in parts, I think, to what evangelist Buckland said earlier.
Right. I was making a commentary on vaccines. And I
Mm-hmm.
was saying that the rapid deployment of the vaccines, especially in the United States, when it was done, in the states that really accepted it, and then there was a kind of political divide because you had the so-called Republican states and the Democratic states. You had a kind, there are some states who took up the vaccine more readily than others, and in the states that did not take it up as readily, we saw a greater devastation of the virus on the population in those states. So what I'm saying is that vaccines are not perfect in themselves. There's not a vaccine that has ever been developed that does not have its side effects. And but one can say of the COVID vaccines that were developed that they had a beneficial effect, but they also had their side effects. But I think things like poisons and so on being introduced in vaccines in their development, I think we have to be very careful in how that kind of view is projected, because there are a lot of conspiracy theories that have been developed by certain right-wing thinking organizations about the vaccine, and one has to be very careful that
You suspect that's one of the such theories?
Yeah, I think so. And we have to be careful that we do not allow those theories to do off the scientific importance of these vaccines. As a matter of fact, those theories have caused people to even turn against traditional vaccines that have helped to really restrain diseases over that have plagued the planet for a very long time. And that is very unfortunate.
Yeah. Evangelist Buckland, I'm sure you want to respond.
All right. An expert on the viruses that I was referring to a few minutes ago.
That's a
from
German
Germany,
scientist?
a scientist, yes, a scientist on viruses, made a public statement recently on
Does he have a
one of the
name?
radio
Is there a name,
stations.
Evangelist, I'm sorry. You have a name of that scientist?
I don't remember his name.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
But I heard him on one of the radio stations a few mornings ago, and he was making the claim that the WHO, the pharmaceutical companies, and the medical establishment know that they are responsible for these different side effects that we were not expecting, but they are afraid to publicly acknowledge this and to make compensation for damages done to many people. So they are sticking together in saying that these things were effective. They're not admitting at this time that they had made some mistakes in these vaccinations. And when you have that kind of hesitation to be honest and open to the public and ask for the public's forgiveness, because we all make mistakes, then the question arises, how may we trust the World Health Organization moving forward? And here's my point briefly. The World Health Organization, up to this point in time, has been an advisory body. They're not issuing laws, and they're not going to come down with sanctions or punishments on any government that doesn't follow their laws. They were in and have been up until now in an advisory role. Now, if they were so unable to deal with this pandemic in an advisory role, how much worse it will be in a legislative role when we will be under obligation to follow what they say or face penalties. And so we are facing a critical point in our history. And another thing that bothers me is that during the height of the pandemic in Jamaica, some Jamaican doctors were offering the government advice on an alternative treatment called ivermectin. And the medical establishment, not just in Jamaica, but internationally, crushed that suggestion. And here is the point I'm bringing out from this. In the event that the World Health Organization takes on a legislative role, it is going to stifle medical opinion. If we come up with a very good treatment of a pandemic, which is different from what the World Health Organization is saying, the medical doctors who are suggesting this alternate treatment could be fined, and the government, if they go along with the medical opinions locally, they also could be fined if the WHO become a legislative body for all 194 nations.
Those are the proposals, Evangelist Buckland, as far as you understand, for the upcoming treaty. Hopefully, they'll have one that it is beneficial to most of us.
Yes, that is one of the proposals, that the World Health Organization will decide what are the right treatments, and anything that is different from their opinion is going to be sanctioned as being misinformation. And that is dangerous, because we develop scientifically when we think for ourselves and do our experiments. Scientific investigation should not be subjected to a legislative body. People should be free to independently pursue solutions to these problems. And people should not be sanctioned if they come up with a different treatment. So that is one danger. You see, we already saw it during the pandemic, and how ivermectin was quickly shut down. You couldn't have it at any pharmacy. And you had to use the vaccines that were being promoted by the World Health Organization.
Okay.
I think that is dangerous.
Yes, hold that point, Evangelist Buckland, because I don't know if Reverend Nemad would like to respond to that in regards to ivermectin and the legislative role of the WHO that is being proposed.
Yes, I sure do, because again, there is a bevy of disinformation that comes largely from the right about this particular the role of the WHO, and the WHO is not into legislation of policies. It does not have that responsibility, nor function, nor role. That is not what is assigned to it.
So this is not fact what was just stated a while ago, that the WHO will have a legislative role in the future?
No, because that is not their remit. It has never been their remit. What they're concerned about is bringing the world together, the countries together, so that they can have a sense of the surveillance of pathogens, have a sense that if we are going to be dealing with this thing in the future, that we have at least a footprint of how we can deal with it. The sharing and outbreak of data, which is very important, and that has been one of the big problems. China, where the virus is supposed to have started, or many people believe that the virus had its origin, has been very laxed, to put it very mildly, in terms of sharing data with the rest of the world, so that we can really come up with a set of strategies against the virus.
Stick up in right here, Rev. I'm so sorry. I was hearing Evangelist Buckland, though, saying that the role of WHO seems to be moving from merely advisory to legislative.
But it isn't.
And you're saying that's a myth. That's just not on the card.
That's a myth, because the WHO in its constitution and mode of function does not have that in its remit as part of it. It cannot legislate for countries. That's not true. It cannot legislate for countries. It gets together as a matter of fact. It's just a member of the UN. It's just an agency of the UN, and it doesn't have that mandate to legislate on behalf of countries.
May I come in at this point just briefly?
Go ahead, please.
Yes. I'm not saying that the WHO presently has a legislative function.
Right.
And that is the reason why the representatives from 194 countries were to meet this week, starting on Monday, yesterday, May 27, to vote on if they should give the WHO legislative authority. So presently they don't have legislative authority. They only have an advisory function. So I'm not dealing with
You have
something
proof of
present.
that, Evangelist Buckland, that is on the cards. No, that's a proposal.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, in my.
I don't know what to believe right now, to be honest.
I
Let me
know you're
ask you,
gonna take a
Evangelist.
break.
I'm coming back to you. Let me ask you, Evangelist. What do we do in the future, though? Because we must have some authoritative voice when we have a pandemic in the future. We can't have everybody doing their own thing. What's going to happen?
We have to examine what is the worldview or the perspectives of that authoritative voice, because the worldview influences interpretations of data. And if the worldview of the WHO is that eventually they want to have a one world government, which is what the globalists that are funding the World Health Organization are seeking, then to have an authoritative voice is one thing, but is that one authoritative voice giving us the right interpretation?
So it's free for all. It's free for all going forward, Evangelist, right? Every man, every woman,
Every country does its own thing.
Its own thing. No, but nothing to guide us.
I believe that our local doctors are competent enough to do their research and to find solutions to these viruses, and that we should not cause our brain to stop thinking and to rely solely on one authoritative organization to decide for the world what treatment should be given. As I said before, some of our local doctors recommended ivermectin and said that it is effective in reducing COVID-19 infection. That was quickly shut down. And if you checked at the pharmacies then and now, you couldn't get any ivermectin.
Because there are doctors who are saying it's not so. They don't agree with that belief.
Okay, well, why is it that they're saying not so? Is it that they have been told by their higher authorities
or they have proved
we
it?
should not?
Or they have seen the results.
Go with that.
Or they have seen the results. But let me ask, Reverend Nemard, you have less than a minute, Reverend Nemard.
Very quickly, I mean, the whole story about the ivermectin, I mean, it started in the United States and spread to places like Jamaica. Again, it is part of this kind of right-wing propaganda that has been out there about the use of ivermectin that has been shut down by some of the best scientists, that horse medicine does not work in people.
But are there not local doctors who have used it and have seen the positive impact? Local doctors. Reverend?
I am not too sure about the evidence on that, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
You know, but just to close off, as I have just this limited time.
We're out of time now, actually. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. All right.
All right.
Thanks, gentlemen. Interesting discussion. Have a safe day, okay?
For you too, and thanks very much.
Great. Listeners, the Morning Watch will return in just a moment.
Anything possible with a little savings in your hand. The time by Jam Bank is
7:30.
Juicy patty, them I me prefer. Not tell no lie. When me eat it, me feel like me want fly. From me and the go youth, I eat me a buy. Juicy patty, yes, nothing else me a try. Love me beef and me love veggie patty. And the one with them cat plant-based. The shrimp patty, chicken patty, make your buy. Say one more them nice juicy patty for me, please. Juicy patty that we love. Juicy patty that I want to give them love. Juicy patty that we love. Juicy patty said any location I can ride.
Everyone has a big to-do list nowadays. With this busy schedule, it's easy to forget about yourself. Don't neglect your blood work. Just go for a quick and easy testing with Aculab Diagnostics Limited. Swift, simple testing, tailored to your timetable. They're open every day, including Sundays, keeping pace with your calendar. Dial 613-2714 for more details. That's 613-2714. Quick results, late hours. Because you matter.
When you say Fosrich, you say electrical. SWA cables, conduits, transformers, and breakers. When you say Fosrich, you say lighting, chandeliers, and more. When you say Fosrich, you say LEDs and solar water heaters. Fosrich is electrical, lighting, solar, and LEDs. Visit us today, Kingston, Mandeville, and Montego Bay. Fosrich.
It's a minute, every rubbish in a pan. The dirty of the place, this a beauty island. So keep Jamaica, cement with clean, keep Jamaica clean. Better listen to me, please. The plastic magnolia blowing at the breeze. Proper garbage, disposal, recycle plastic, now make it pull up in the streets. Buckets and minutes, every rubbish in a pan. The dirty of the place, this a beauty island. So keep Jamaica, cement with clean. A message from the National Solid Waste Management Authority.
When tape diapers are difficult to change, it's time for Pampers Easy Ups. 360 stretchy waistband. They're easy to put on and take off, keeping their skin dry and protected.
Changes are easy with Easy Ups.
Mama work hard, for real. She do the most to send me and my brother go school. So, the dream was always to go to university. Well, I fulfilled 2 dreams with 1 Jane Bank savings plan, you know. I further my education and I make mama proud.
Stop wishing you could. With your Jane Bank savings, you absolutely can. Jane Bank.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. You know, coming up next, we'll read some of the feedback from our social media question. What is most needed now to help fight gender-based violence? I repeat, what is most needed now to help fight gender-based violence? We're asking you to leave a comment on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, Love 101 FM Jamaica, or WhatsApp 876-997-3125. We'll be right back.
I am just a little girl, but I have big dreams. And one day, all my dreams are going to come true. That's why I'm glad Mommy opened a Sajikwa Bank Star Savers account for me. It's the best gift she could ever give me. Because one day, I won't be little anymore. And my small savings are going to grow big. I even got my own debit card. Give your child a gift that will grow. Open a Sajikwa Bank Star Savers account today.
Ready to experience 6 times more freshness in your clothes? Try Downy Scent Beads. Its fragrance is so amazing, you have to sniff it to believe it. Try Downy Scent Beads today. 6 times more freshness versus using detergent alone.
Treat mom like the queen she is with Mama Mania deals all May long at Appliance Traders Limited. Shop up to 50% off. TVs, fridges, air fryers, and more. Plus free gifts with select purchases. Visit us in Kingston, Ochibo Bay, or at atljamaica.com. Conditions apply.
welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. And so now we segue into the second watch. And the issue of gender-based violence is not new. However, there are renewed concerns that such incidents in Jamaica have seemingly increased in both number and nature. And so in this, the second watch, let's discuss the current state of gender-based violence in Jamaica and the urgent need for positive change in that regard. And to discuss this disturbing issue, we have online so far Pastor Courtney Morrison, co-host of The Mailbox on Love 101 FM, and he's also the chairman of Mogava. Good morning, my brother.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing, Pastor Morrison?
I am well.
Great, man. Great.
I am well.
Great.
I was hoping not to be alone.
Yes, we're hoping the same. But, you know, in this Christian thing, we are never really alone, eh? Right. Now, so as not to take anything for granted, Pastor Morrison, let me begin by asking, what is your preferred definition of gender-based violence?
I was hoping I'd not be asked that question because
Maybe
the
that's why I asked.
the terminology itself tends to present some sort of ambiguity about it. Because once you hear it, you're thinking about violence primarily against women, when the term used there is gender, which both presents male and female, and not just that they're involved. Because gender-based violence can be seen amongst male partners, female partners, and male and female partners. You know, sometimes we go deeper and call it intimate partner violence. But it's really an act of violence, whether emotional or physical, towards someone of gender in a relationship. Let me limit it to that by saying it. But primarily what we see happening mainly, even here, I brought up something that spoke about gender-based violence in Jamaica. And it's awesome in the sense that, again, there tends to be a bias towards the feminine gender, because this is what it says. Gender-based violence remain pervasive in Jamaica, with 4 in 10 women experiencing some form of intimate partner violence. Despite progress towards gender equality, women still face challenges in the workplace and are underrepresented in leadership position, even though Jamaica has by far the highest representation of middle management and senior level management of females.
Wow.
It is something that is complex, and indeed violence of any sort cannot be condoned, whether emotional, physical, or gender-based or intimate partner related. And as such, we have to be very careful how we approach the matter.
Having said that, are there different types of gender-based violence, Pastor Morrison?
I said there's intimate partner violence that we see persons in relationships that are intimate that often displays some form of violence. I remember interviewing Dr. Lekem Samaj, and he coined the term emotional violence. And yes, it's actually something that we tend to negate. We tend to speak mainly about physical abuse and violence, as opposed to the emotional stimuli that tends to generate a physical response. One which is where we are trying to go in having persons have dialogue instead of actually becoming physical. But intimate partner violence is very real and very pervasive, not only in Jamaica, but all around. And as such, we have to learn how to dialogue. We have to learn how to mediate. And because if you can't do it by yourself, then mediation is necessary and will help.
And do they also speak about sexual violence in that regard?
Non-partner sexual violence. You know, research showed that in Jamaica, and I think it's coming from our days of slavery, actually, there are some embedded things in when I say our DNA, but in how we tend to behave, where usually have a thing that we talk about hold down and take away. And that there were many men who believe that this is almost an entitlement when it comes down to women. And if the women are saying no, it really means yes, which we definitely want men to hear. Absolute nonsense. There's nothing that should persuade you into a hold down and take away. Not that if a woman says no, then they're somehow trying to play hard. And it's one of the reasons I don't talk about men are hunters and women are the hunted. Terminologies we love to use. Because some men seem to think women are game. And the harder the game, the greater the hunt. We have to be careful that we sort of set up men to become predators as opposed to, charm and elegance and walking into something else.
And of course,
I don't use the term men are hunters and women are the hunted.
Of course, you have women who also seem to do the hunting at times.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Cuts both ways.
And it's strange. There are many men, and let me use the word initiate, and many men who would prefer a woman to initiate the act of approach firstly, and many women are waiting on men to do the approach. So we have that sort of dichotomy of thought that tends to leave persons trying to figure out how to navigate this intimate partner issue. And as we go along in life, things are taking a change. When men used to be the more persuasive in terms of trying to, persuade the woman. There are some women out there nowadays, sir, that without question, they will tell you that you're soft.
Right.
Not approached.
Right. What are some of the main causes, would you say, Pastor Morrison, of gender-based violence, especially within the Jamaican context?
Lack of education, lack of proper information, and a lot of it is misinformation, mainly by what we see. There are two things that happens in our nation. Some things are taught, some things are caught. And many of our men are seeing other men whom seem to have gal and have gal in a bungle. And because they see that and they believe it is a rites of passage to actually thinking, I don't know if by scripture Solomon had many wives, let's also persuade ourselves to have many. And in going down that road, they are feeling entitled that they can say anything, do anything to the woman, while the converse must never happen. Otherwise, it's met with physical force. We have to stop and recognize that sort of misinformation, that sort of teaching is neither biblical nor is it ethically human.
But then, Pastor, that's dealing with the men in terms of, being the aggressor. What about the women? What would be the causes for that, for women to be involved in gender-based violence, they being the aggressor?
It's interesting that you should ask that, because I'm a male advocate as well, Magava chairman.
Right.
And when it comes on to what's happening in today's society, which started quite some time ago, our women are thinking, hey, we are seeing, and this is more postulation than it is necessarily documented.
Tell seeing, Pastor Morrison, as you know very well, we're up on a break. We'll be right back, okay?
Time is now 7:45 a.m.
You know them, the movers, the shakers, the people making a difference, who never shy away from a challenge, who are never afraid to dirty their hands, to jump in and get things done, who are never afraid to fail, to take a risk, to learn, You know them and aspire to be like them. And you can, because there's always room for greatness. Apply today. University of Technology Jamaica, the birthplace of greatness.
You're invited to listen to Dollars and Cents every Thursday at 8:16 a.m. We'll give you tips on how to make your money count, how to save, and how to grow your wealth. It's all inside Dollars and Cents, brought to you by BPN Financial Limited, taking you higher. That's Dollars and Cents every Thursday at 8:16 a.m. on the family station, Love 101.
Think ahead, make a plan. You got the freedom of choice.
Lark, long-acting reversible contraceptives.
I made my choice 6 years ago. I have an IUCD, also called copper T, and it will go and protect me from pregnancy for another 4 years at least. My choice was an implant. It lasts for 5 years. And when I'm ready for a baby, I just make doctor take it out. Contact the National Family Planning Board at 968-1632 to find out more about the Lark.
Think ahead, make a plan. You got the freedom of choice.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. And in the second watch, we're looking on gender-based violence. And in so doing, we have online Pastor Courtney Morrison, who before the break was responding to the question, what are the causes of gender-based violence, especially when the women are the villains. Interested to hear what you have to say about that, Pastor. Go ahead.
You know what? As I even began to say in the beginning, when we hear gender-based violence, there tends to be a bias towards the first thing we hear. It's men being the perpetrators of the violence, and not necessarily women. So I'm glad for this sort of balance when the question is asked, because data is out there on the men being the perpetrators and the women being the victims. But there is very little data, little to nothing, as to when it's the converse, when women are, because I've had persons in my counseling session whom I will never forget this particular one, where the woman, I had them both in the office, and the woman was actually boasting. Oh, she, when I'm not behaving himself, I'm just take the cup and just bounce him in my head. As a metal enamel cup. And the young man sat there because he thought, as I would believe, seeing that households are mainly run by women in Jamaica, that you must not hit a woman. So he's absorbing all of this. And one of the worst thing is that when it is perpetrated against the man, and we are hoping and we're seeing changes in some of the police stations, that when it's reported, the man is either ran from the station, but now these days it's gotten better, or no report is taken. But when the woman is the aggressor, it is seemingly seen as abnormal. It's not the norm. But I'm sure as we go along and they will be presenting data, you'll be seeing that that is so much on the increase that we might be experiencing at least 1 or 2 in every 10 men experiencing this sort of gender-based violence. The women seem to now have the concept in their mind where before I become abused, let me be the abuser. And not in the sense of saying that, but I will take the lead in ensuring that I am not abused. It's strange how it happens. The theme I know the Bureau of Gender Affairs has is that there's no excuse for abuse. And when it becomes an issue not just of abuse, but one of violence, then it must be balanced, and it must be one that is seen as happening across the board. Let me give you a little statistics outside of gender-based violence. In 2019, persons who died by violence in Jamaica, out of the first 100 in January in 2019, 85 of who died by violence were men. 8% were women, and 7% were children. I remember when I posted that statistic to my Facebook page, the first person to respond was a female who said she don't see it. The truth is, what has happened, just like I've told you about sometime what happened at the police stations, which I'm happy to see that it has decreased, is that we have grown insensitive to our men being either abused or dying, or it is that we have become so accustomed to it that we have become desensitized and, in a sense, dehumanized when the offense is against the male. Because men are the main perpetrators, as is said. But the truth is, men do not necessarily report that they are being abused or that acts of violence are being taken out against them. Whether or not we want to say it's the male ego, but because it is not something that is spoken of regularly,
the suffering silence.
It's, you know, that is said by my gym instructor, suffer in silence. Yes.
Yeah. You had mentioned earlier, Pastor Morrison, about the lack of education and misinformation. What's the role of media? What's the role of our music? What's the role of the church in that regard, and especially how some scriptures are used and abused?
Yes. Let me start with music and media and end up in my place of profession, the church. Music and media tends to promote that which is generally out there. Most often, I'm hoping that research is done and not just that there's a reporting of the overlying circumstances and not seeing what is happening below the surface. And I think most often if we report what is happening below, that is getting the cause and not just the symptoms of why we're having the situations we're having, then a report is better done when given an understanding and not one where it is done mainly to win those who we want our station to be the one that is heard, and we have the exclusive news on this one. And the music now is one where they're singing about what they're seeing generally, and most of what they are reporting or commentating on in the music is usually what is the negative side, the poor side of what is happening out there, without giving solutions. And that is where we're having a difficulty. We're great at pointing out many things that are wrong, and we lack solutions. Where it comes on to the church somehow think these things are taboo and are to be avoided or not to be spoken of. When we're looking at what is being reported, even in wide religious circles in the media, and we're seeing some of the gender-based violence, domestic violence issues, it's amazing because one would think that the church, being a progenitor of that which is righteous, that this doesn't happen in the church, yet we have to recognize that the church is like a hospital. There are many patients. Now, when it comes on to the church, there might be what we would consider, even with the hospitals, patient, doctors, confidentiality and privileges, which sometimes, people think you're covering up issues when, you don't necessarily.
The man pastor is the head of the home, Ephesians chapter 5, right? Yes, and therefore he calls the shots. And also on the other end of the spectrum, forgiveness. If that is going on, some people would argue, well, you exercise forgiveness and you move on. You almost ignore the reality of the violence that is taking place. What's your take on that?
It happens that way. I'm one of those who talk about accountability statuses because mainly men are given levels of accountability and not necessarily a woman. We hear about being protector, provider, priest, prophet, the leaders. I remember going to a conference and asking if the women can give me levels of accountability that they have in single 5 words, just like we spoke of for the men. And we find that, even as you said it, men are the head of the home. There's an accountability. And one of the things I hate, and I'm saying that abhor, is when someone says, be a man.
You hear that phrase? Is what you're saying?
Because I don't hear the converse, be a woman.
Okay.
And we hear about real men, and we don't hear about real women. When the truth is, even broken men abusive men are real men. They have a problem that needs to be fixed. And as you speak to forgiveness in the church, we need to stop and try to do what the Lord Jesus does. He restores, he reconciles, he redeems. And as such, when we look at what is happening in the church, yes, there are issues there that should be addressed differently. I agree. Yet some persons have that concept, as you said, because of the issue of provision, being private. You know, even when Joseph found out that Mary was pregnant, because of the repercussions that he would have seen happening, he decided that he was going to put her away privately. You know, there are many female protectors of their men that even when the abuse or physical abuse starts, whether or not we believe it, they try to protect our men. So protection isn't necessarily just physical. It can be about dignity, pride. It can be about many other things. And so when it comes on to gender-based violence, it's a bit complicated in terms of what we have been taught in society as to male roles, female roles. And with that sort of convolution, sometimes we're not sure how to approach it. But I believe education is important so that we can have dialogue, not feeling that we should become physical or even verbally abusive. And again, the concept, which one is more devastating, physical or emotional abuse? Emotional abuse can last for life. Physical abuse tend to be repaired sometimes, still having emotional residues, yet it's easier to deal with sometimes than the emotional abuse. And so we have to be careful how we present the issues out there. Let us not have it being slanted one way or the other, but that we approach every situation like Jesus did with their own unique foundations and try to address what is happening there.
What would you say though, Pastor, to those who are listening are saying, "Why two reverends can go and talk here because I know my situation." That there are some persons who, because of fear, the fear factor, if they were to ever come out and report it, they perhaps will be more abused. Or the breadwinner is the abuser, and they need that person to be around, and so they prefer to cover that up rather than to stay in the house and starve, or don't have a home to stay in at all. What's your quick response to that in a minute?
Again, because of what we have been taught mainly, and some of them are caught, as I said, taught or caught, that even the woman seemingly should be dependent on the man for certain things, and he's a breadwinner, and so I stick with the abuse, I stick with the fact that I'm not able to be out there. Dr. Herbert Gale made a presentation once that in Jamaica, our men were only known as fathers after emancipation. Before that, they were just breeders. And they only were progenitors of having children. And the women were the one that would take care of the children, especially the sons. So you hear man talk about them all have them youth. Well, the woman, you know, he said, only in Jamaica you'll have one woman with 4 different children, 4 different surnames. Because of the concept in our minds and in some female mind and in the mind of the man, him just want to have a mute, the woman must take care of the child. The abuse become real because of what we have perceived.
Well,
that's what we need to change.
Well, great. Thank you so very much, Pastor Morrison, for exploring this troubling issue with us. And we hope that persons will be better educated about it and equipped to deal with it. Have a safe and productive day, Pastor.
Bless you. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we continue to set the stage for the discussion of topical and controversial issues. For information or get copies of this program, call our production department at 876-968-9596-7. This, of course, has been the Morning Watch, thanks to our producer, Kathy Gale, and our guests. I'm Dylan Toussaint, handing you back to Love in the Morning with Jokal Daya.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to the Morning Watch. The time is now 8 a.m. and we now invite you to listen to Forward in Faith, brought to you by the New Testament Church of God in Bayside, Portmore.